Have you ever paid attention to your first breath after waking up? Probably not. Most of us jump out of bed in a rush, stepping into a new day as if our bodies automatically know what to do. I used to be the same way, until I witnessed something I could never forget. After more than 20 years working in brain health care for older adults, I've come to realize that it's the smallest actions, taken at the most delicate moments, that can preserve an entire chapter of life. I remember that morning vividly. A 74-year-old man was brought into the emergency room, unable to speak, his left arm nearly immobile, though he remained fully conscious. Just 10 minutes earlier, he had been perfectly fine. He woke up, got out of bed, walked into the bathroom as usual. And then suddenly, silence. His wife thought he was joking. But I knew it was a minor stroke, silent, but dangerous. What shocked me wasn't just the stroke itself, but the cause behind it. It wasn't due to chronic illness, medication, or overexertion. It was because he had gotten up too quickly, when his body and more importantly, his brain wasn't ready. After a full night's sleep, blood circulation slows, blood pressure drops, and oxygen levels supplying the brain are at their lowest. When we abruptly stand, blood flow hasn't had a chance to adjust, leaving the brain momentarily starved of oxygen. And just those few seconds can cause damage. I've seen too many people lose their memory, their voice, and their ability to care for themselves simply because they didn't know what to do in the first 3 minutes of their morning. That's why today, I share this not as a doctor, but as someone who has witnessed far too much regret. A morning breathing tip. Simple. Free. No equipment required. Just 3 minutes and a bit of patience. At the end of this video, I'll guide you step by step. You can do it right from your bed, starting tomorrow morning. And maybe, just maybe, those 3 small minutes could save your voice, your memory, and the most precious independence in your life. Charles lives in the suburbs of Arizona, 72 years old, retired for nearly 6 years. He used to be a high school sports coach, ate well, took morning walks, stayed optimistic, and loved gardening. No one would imagine that someone like him could suddenly collapse inside his own home. But that's exactly what happened, and Charles never suspected it all started from a habit he kept for over 30 years, getting out of bed too quickly after waking up. That morning was no different from any other. Charles woke up at 6 a.m., like he always did. He opened his eyes, sat up quickly, then placed his feet on the floor. But just seconds later, his head started to spin, his vision blurred, and his knees gave out. He tried to steady himself against the wall, but his left hand had no strength. That's when he realized something was wrong. He tried to call out to his wife, but the words came out in broken, slurred sounds. His wife, Nancy, thought it was just a mild drop in blood pressure. She helped him sit down and gave him some water, assuming he'd feel better in a few minutes. But I knew immediately this was a textbook sign of a transient ischemic attack. And if not recognized early, it could turn into a full-blown stroke within 24 to 48 hours. Charles was lucky. He was taken to the emergency room in time, underwent brain scans and testing. Results showed that the area of the brain responsible for motor control on the right hemisphere had experienced a brief episode of reduced blood flow. Just a few hours later, the damage might have become irreversible. The cause wasn't a chronic illness, it was simply that he didn't wake his body up properly. The brain, after a long night of sleep, needs to be gently awakened. While we sleep, our blood pressure and heart rate drop, the body is in a state of deep rest. If we jump up too quickly, especially as we get older, the brain can't adapt fast enough to the shift in blood pressure, resulting in a momentary lack of blood to the brain. For aging blood vessels, even a few seconds of that can be dangerous. When I saw Charles again at his follow-up appointment, he said something that stuck with me. I always thought strokes were for the weak, the frail. I never imagined that my own quickness could almost kill me. And that was the moment he began to change. Each morning, before getting out of bed, he now sits quietly for a few minutes and practices a simple deep breathing routine I taught him. No more dizziness. No more trembling hands. Most importantly, he has learned how to truly listen to his body. Charles's story isn't rare. But it's an important reminder for anyone over 60, don't let haste cost you what you can't get back: your memory, your voice, your clarity, and your independence. We often think that to protect the brain, we need supplements, complex diets, or specialized treatments. But there's one basic, familiar, and completely free thing that many people overlook: breathing. After a long, deep night's sleep, the body enters a standby state. Blood pressure drops, heart rate slows, and oxygen exchange decreases. This is natural, the body needs it for recovery. But when you open your eyes in the morning, your brain isn't immediately ready to function. It needs a few minutes to readjust to the rising flow of blood. And the very first thing the brain needs is oxygen. Slow, deep breathing upon waking is like a gentle breeze through a garden just beginning to stir. If you water a budding plant too forcefully, it breaks. If you rush blood into the brain while vessels are still contracted from sleep, you create a shock. But if you breathe properly, you help the blood vessels expand naturally, stabilize your heart rate, and give your brain a steady supply of oxygen to start the day. I often tell my patients, morning breathing isn't about staying alive, it's about staying clear. Especially for those over 60, jumping out of bed too quickly doesn't just increase the risk of orthostatic hypotension, it can trigger a transient ischemic attack, which many people mistakenly dismiss as just a bit of dizziness. Correct morning breathing helps you do three things. First, it safely restores blood flow to the brain. Second, it regulates the sympathetic nervous system so you don't wake up with panic, racing heart, or shallow breath. Third, it helps set a stable biological rhythm, gradually improving sleep quality over time. So, what should you do? My advice is simple. After opening your eyes, don't rush to get up. Sit quietly on the bed, place both hands on your thighs, close your eyes, and begin a gentle breathing cycle. Inhale through your nose for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale slowly through your mouth for 6 to 8 seconds. Repeat 4 to 6 times. It takes less than 3 minutes, but within a few days you'll notice a difference: a clearer mind, steadier steps, and a calmer morning mood. You can also follow this with a small glass of warm water to help circulation. Then sit for 1 more minute, simply listening to your own breath. Don't rush. Let your body have the right to adjust to being awake safely and kindly. You might think, I've been jumping out of bed for years, I'm fine. But what you may not know is that tiny injuries in the brain can happen quietly, little by little, morning by morning, accumulating like cracks beneath the surface, until one day they erupt into a full-blown stroke. I don't say this to scare you. I say it because I've seen it happen too many times. And I hope you won't be one of them. Start your day with awareness. Don't let old habits harm you. You can change with just one breath. Margaret didn't say she was ill. She simply said that she felt like she was slowly disappearing every morning. No one could see it. No test results raised concern. No alarm bells rang. Just a feeling that was hard to name, as if her mind was slipping away from her own body the moment she opened her eyes. Everything felt blurry. Every movement seemed unfamiliar. No obvious dizziness. No headaches. But also none of the usual clarity she used to know. She shared that some mornings, she would sit on the edge of her bed for a long time, not knowing why she was still there. Not because she was tired, but because she was afraid. Afraid that if she stood up, she'd fall. Afraid that if she walked a few steps, she wouldn't know where she was going. afraid of losing control over herself. Once, she whispered to me, "I feel like I'm living inside a fog. It's not cold. It doesn't hurt. But I can't seem to touch anything anymore." I didn't give her medication. I gave her a rhythm. A breath. I told her, "Tomorrow morning, don't jump up. Don't do anything. Let the morning light touch your eyelids first. Then sit still, close your eyes, and breathe as if you're calling your body back to you." We didn't talk much about results. We didn't discuss risk or mechanisms. We simply agreed on one thing: her body needed a gentle invitation. And she tried. The first 3 days, she didn't feel much. But on the 4th day, she sent me a short message: "This morning, I didn't see the fog." I didn't need to ask more. I knew she was beginning to feel herself again. Each day after that, she told me she sat quietly a bit longer. Not to avoid anything, but to listen more. The small tremors in her legs began to fade. She no longer gripped the stair railing like she used to. And what moved me most was when she wrote, "I've returned to breakfast. Just a small piece of toast. And it tasted good." Not because the breathing had magical power, but because she allowed herself to begin again. No pressure. No rush. Just with one breath. I'm sharing Margaret's story not for you to admire her but to help you look within yourself. If you've ever felt like mornings are a struggle, felt dizzy, breathless, or simply like you're not quite yourself anymore, please, don't stay silent. Don't assume it's normal. Take a few minutes each morning. Before you rise. Before you walk. Sit with yourself. Take a deep breath as if you're inviting life to return. Then hold that breath like a gift. And exhale slowly as if you're releasing everything you no longer need to carry. That's all. Sometimes, recovery doesn't begin with medicine. It begins with a moment when you finally listen to yourself. There are habits we repeat every morning, for so long that we no longer remember why we started them. We just know, it's always been this way. Jumping out of bed the moment we open our eyes. Placing our feet on the floor while our brain is still in a fog. Taking a cold shower when the body is still curled inward. Skipping water. Skipping breakfast. Skipping breath. None of these, on their own, are terrifying. But when done consecutively, routinely, by a body that has aged, the consequences are no longer distant. I don't say this to scare you. I just want you to look at yourself in the mirror and ask, am I starting my day? Or am I sending my body into survival mode? Because behind every brief spell of dizziness is a vascular system straining to keep up. Behind every shallow breath is a brain cell starved for oxygen. Behind every skipped breakfast is a memory center struggling to function on empty. And behind every normal-looking morning is a day your body has to work harder to cover up the small injuries building up beneath the surface. The longer I work in the field of brain health, the more I understand this: the body never betrays you. It gives you warnings. It whispers. It repeats its signals. But when you stop listening, it goes quiet. And when it goes quiet, it lets the consequences speak instead. Many people collapse in the bathroom while washing their hair. Many fade beside the dining table, never knowing why. Many never get out of bed again just because that morning, they rushed. No one thinks it'll happen to them. We call it fate. Sudden. Must be the heart, we say. But it's not. It's the accumulation of small choices, ones we never stopped to question. And then we call all of it aging. But no, that's not aging. That's what happens when we stop noticing. Stop listening. Stop being intentional. One morning is enough to change the course of your remaining life for better or worse. Waking up isn't about leaping out of bed. Waking up is about returning to yourself slowly, consciously, and kindly. The question is no longer, how do I live longer? But rather, how do I stop unknowingly hurting myself every day? No one will wake you with a warning bell. Everything happens in silence. Second by second. Morning by morning. And the choice has always been in your hands. We often think we're fully awake each morning. That everything we do from getting out of bed, stepping into the bathroom, to turning on the faucet is done by choice. But the truth is, most of what you do right after waking up is no longer conscious. It's reflex actions your brain has memorized and automated, like driving down a familiar road without noticing each turn. The brain calls this energy-saving mode. It lets you repeat old actions so it doesn't have to reprocess them from scratch. And if what you're repeating is something healthy, that's fortunate. But if you're repeating something harmful like jumping up too quickly, shallow breathing, skipping water, or skipping breakfast, then the brain gets used to that mistake too. It won't react. It won't question it. It won't warn you a second time. Because it has labeled it a safe habit. I once met a 70-year-old man who lived a very steady life, waking early, going for walks, eating lightly. He suffered a mild stroke on a winter morning, not because of a major illness, but because he believed that morning was just like every other morning. And he got out of bed just like always. His body had changed. But his brain had never been updated about it. We don't often think we need to retrain the brain after turning 60. But that's exactly when the body's silent changes begin to affect memory, balance, and reflexes in visible ways. At 30, you can jump out of bed anytime without feeling dizzy. At 70, the same action can trigger a sudden drop in blood pressure and leave you collapsed before you can call for help. But the brain doesn't track age. It only memorizes the behavior you repeat. So if you want to change something in your body, you must first begin with awareness. You must pause, reflect, and tell yourself, today is no longer the day it was 10 years ago. This body needs a different way to start. A way to slow down, breathe deeply, and tune into every small reaction. When you do that every morning, the brain will begin to relearn a new habit. It will start responding to the new signal. And this time it will protect you. Not with medication. Not with machines. But with the adaptive intelligence built into you from the start. You just need to remind it to remember. Together, we've looked back at the small things in our morning routine, things that seem harmless. From jumping out of bed too quickly, shallow breathing, skipping breakfast, to forgetting to check in with ourselves. We've seen how the brain can get used to doing the wrong thing and how that silently affects our memory, balance, and even survival. We've come to understand that the morning brain is not the same as the one at night, and that if we don't wake it properly, we're missing a chance to protect our most precious asset. We've walked through real stories of people once trembling in a fog, who found clarity again through a single morning breath. And in the end, we paused at a choice, to keep living on autopilot or to begin again, with just 3 minutes of mindful awareness each morning. If you've made it this far with me, then perhaps something in you has already shifted. And if that small shift makes you want to slow down, be more alert, and take better care of your brain, then this video has done its job. I invite you to leave a comment, maybe your thoughts, an experience of your own, or simply the words, "I'll begin again tomorrow morning." If you found this video helpful, please share it with someone you truly care about. And if you'd like to continue this journey with meaningful insights made for those over 60 living in the US, follow our channel, Thrive 60+. We're here not just to talk about health, but to help you truly live, starting from the very first breath of each day.